sound of wind whistling, then fades to a faint, unsettling hum. Have you ever heard a sound so out of place that it makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up? A noise that your brain just can't explain away? Aram did. Every single night. It always started just after midnight. A slow, dragging sound, like someone pacing just outside his bedroom window. Footsteps. The problem was, Arham lived on the 5th floor. His window led out to a small, enclosed balcony. There was no way for anyone to be out there. At first, he tried to rationalize it. It's an old building, he'd tell himself. Old buildings make strange noises. The pipes groan, the wood settles. He'd pull his blanket tighter, close his eyes, and force himself to ignore the rhythmic scrape, shuffle, scrape, shuffle. That echoed from just beyond the glass. But the sound was persistent. It was methodical. It wasn't the random creaking of a house settling. It was the deliberate pace of someone walking back and forth, back and forth. For weeks, this nightly ritual continued. Arham's sleep became fractured, his days filled with a low-grade dread that would build as the sun went down. He tried telling his parents, but they just smiled, ruffling his hair. "It's just the wind, champ," his dad would say, "or your imagination running wild." But Aram knew it wasn't the wind. The wind didn't wear shoes. One night, the sound seemed closer, more defined. The curiosity, which had been simmering beneath his fear, finally boiled over. He couldn't stand it anymore. He had to know. He had to see. He slipped out of bed, his own feet silent on the cold wooden floor. The air in the room felt heavy, thick. As he tiptoed towards the sliding glass door that led to the balcony, the footsteps suddenly stopped. The silence that followed was somehow more terrifying than the noise itself. It was absolute, as if the entire world was holding its breath, waiting. Aram's heart was a drum against his ribs. His hand, slick with sweat, trembled as he reached for the edge of the heavy curtain. He told himself it was nothing. He was going to pull it back, see an empty balcony bathed in the pale moonlight and feel ridiculous. He'd laugh it off and go back to bed. Taking a shaky breath, he pulled the fabric aside in one swift motion. Nothing. Just as he'd predicted. The balcony was completely empty. A lone, dead leaf skittered across the concrete in a sudden gust of wind. A wave of relief, so powerful it almost made him dizzy, washed over him. He let out a shaky sigh, a small, nervous laugh escaping his lips. Imagination, he whispered to himself, feeling foolish. He turned his back on the window, ready to crawl back into the safety of his bed. And that's when the footsteps started again. Scrape, shuffle. But this time, they were deafeningly loud, directly behind him, just on the other side of the glass. He spun around, his blood running cold, and he saw it. Pressed against the glass was a figure. It was tall and unnaturally thin, its form vague and wavering in the dim light. Its skin was the color of bone, stretched taut over a skeletal frame. But the face, that's what broke him. Its eyes were black, hollow pits that seemed to absorb all light, all hope. Its mouth was stretched open in a silent, eternal scream. It wasn't looking at the room. It was looking directly at him. Aram was paralyzed, his feet rooted to the floor. The figure slowly, deliberately raised a long, spindly arm. One bony finger lifted and pointed straight at Aram. He could feel its gaze like a physical weight crushing him. Then the finger moved slowly, chillingly, and pointed down at the simple metal lock on the sliding door. The message was clear. Let me in. A scream finally tore from Aram's throat. He broke from his trance, scrambling backward, stumbling over his own feet. He turned and ran, not even glancing back. "Mom! Dad!" he yelled, his voice cracking with terror. He burst into his parents' bedroom, ready to collapse into their arms, to be told it was just a nightmare. But the room was empty. The bed was perfectly made, the sheets cold and undisturbed. A cold, stark realization hit him. He was alone in the house, and then he heard it. From down the hall, from his own bedroom, came a small metallic sound, a faint but decisive click. The sound of the lock on the balcony door disengaging. A long, drawn-out screech of metal on metal followed as the door slowly slid open. The figure was coming inside. Aram backed away, pressing himself into the far corner of his parents' room, his eyes wide with horror. The dragging footsteps resumed, no longer muffled by glass. They were inside now. Scrape. Shuffle. Scrape. Shuffle. Coming down the hallway, getting closer and closer. As the tall, pale silhouette appeared in the doorway, Aram opened his mouth and screamed, a raw, final sound of pure terror. The next morning, the sun rose on a quiet house. The balcony door in Aram's room was closed, the lock fastened. The room was empty. Aram was gone. The police were called, a search was conducted, but no trace of the boy was ever found. His parents returned from their supposed trip, frantic and heartbroken, swearing they had only been gone for the night. The building slowly returned to normal, but the story doesn't end there. The family eventually moved out, unable to live with the memory. New tenants came and went, and soon the neighbors started to talk. They spoke in hushed whispers about the fifth-floor apartment. They say that if you happen to be awake late at night, around 3 a.m., and you look up at that specific balcony, you might hear something. A faint, rhythmic sound. Scrape. Shuffle. Scrape. Shuffle. The sound of someone walking back and forth, restlessly, endlessly. The strangest part? The balcony is always empty. Thank you so much for joining me for this chilling tale. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more spooky content every week. Let me know in the comments if you've ever heard a noise you just couldn't explain. Stay safe, and see you next time.